for those who are not educated, you know, on the process, like myself, I'll be vulnerable for a second. How do we educate ourselves on voting and who to vote for so that we don't end up with another Lisa?
Great question.
That is a really, really tough question, because the way the candidates present themselves is not the way they govern later on. There were people who got the endorsement of our revolution, and whatever you think about that group, at least they were trying to hold the candidates to something. They have been able to hold the candidates to nothing. It is important to run for office. It's important to put the pressure on that. It's important to vote on that. I say that, I mean, I ran for city council twice myself, and I agree with Nakima. Oh my God. Well, it's for someone younger than me. She's young enough still. But, you know, it's very, very hard to get somebody good elected, but you can put some pressure on them. I like to think that the incumbent who I ran against had to watch over his shoulder just a little bit. When you keep up the action between the elections as well. And that gives us some power there. But boy, the electoral arena is probably the toughest one of all. We've got a lot of things we can do though in between marching. And she talked about data. There is so much good and important research to be done. Frankly, this is one of the things Community United Against Police Brutality does. Yep. We get data from the city. We have to fight for it. We've won 5 lawsuits against the city so far, and we have 2 more going right now that we are going to win. Because they hide the data from us. And you know why they hide that? Because of what it shows. We saw when an officer does get disciplined in that rare case, we can get the full file so that we know what the complaint was about, as opposed to just there was one and it was closed without discipline. There was an officer, Troy Carlson, who came across, it was a high-speed pursuit. The uncle was in the passenger seat. He had no idea the car was stolen. To stop the thing, he threw the car into park at 80 miles an hour. Doesn't do a car a lot of good. It's caught on fire. The cops are right behind him. He gets out, does exactly the right drill. Puts down his cane. He's an older guy. Puts down his cane, goes flat on the ground with his arms stretched out. There is no dispute. The camera was on. The investigators had no dispute. He did nothing whatsoever to resist. Officer Troy Carlson came down, put the full weight of his knee on his neck, ground his face into the pavement, chipping teeth top and bottom. I fear this sounds somewhat familiar. Yes. But on top of that, he punched him hard in the back of the head and in the back, and then handcuffing him, brought his left arm so high up that they could hear it snap.
Come on now. Oh my God.
Broke his arm. This is all documented. There is no dispute about it. This was brought as a complaint to the Office of Police Conduct Review. That officer got a 40-hour suspension. 1 week of unpaid vacation. And that is something we would know nothing about, except for years and years of effort to try to get this kind of documentation. So that is just one small example. There's a lot we can do. And I'll tell you, when the national media and the international media heard what had happened in Minneapolis, it was so good that there was already that information, so they could understand why. This could happen in just about any city, but there's a reason why it happened here.
Yeah.
It's that kind of history, and we need to continue to do that work in between the marching.
Absolutely. What year was that Troy Carlson did that?
I believe it was 2013, 2014.
Is he now?
It takes years for the discipline to actually take effect.
Is he now in SWAT?
You know, I have no idea, and I should know that.
Okay.
That's the next thing for us to find out. We got a lot of research to do, and anybody who loves reading huge files, oh boy, do we have fun for you.
And so here's the deal. If you're talking about like information and data, you need to introduce yourself to Communities United Against Police Brutality. You have to right now. I know that a lot of people wanted to jump on the bandwagon with Reclaim the Block and other groups that had just kind of sprung up, but Communities United Against Police Brutality has been here
for decades
before some of y'all were born. So CUAPB.org, CUAPB.org. That is where you can invest your time. We'll take one more. We'll take one more comment from Nikema and then
there's
another question.
also a database as well.
Okay.
You can look up information on MPD officers, the complaints that they have. There's also a civil rights database, and that was through you guys fighting and other people fighting, ACLU fighting to get that information released publicly. One other thing I'll say in response to the voting question, it is difficult to run for office here and win. The honest reason is because white people control our electoral system and our electoral politics. And some of the worst white people I had to deal with were those who thought that they were liberal and progressive. Those who thought they were liberal and progressive are some of the worst white people I have had to deal with. And part of it is because they think, because they support certain candidates, they vote for certain things. That does not equate to being anti-racist, right? It is not an anti-racism agenda. Some of the worst racism I dealt with were from people who claim that they care about black lives, who got the signs in their window, who talking about all are welcome here, but they're not serious about black people. But in Minneapolis, because we have ranked choice voting, there is an opportunity for people to run and to win. But you have to be willing to buck the system, right? So that means you might not seek the DFL endorsement, to be honest with you. That means you might have to use guerrilla tactics to fundraise and get the word out and not use their systems, because how many DFLers have run our city and allowed Minneapolis police to get out of control? That's the bottom line. I vote DFL, but I also understand the need to hold them accountable, because they are responsible for why our police force is the way that it is. So you gotta be willing to buck the system, but it can be done. And the difference here, when I ran in 2017, like our movement was only maybe 2.5 years old and we have been out marching, right? Now, whoever runs and you've been out here, that's 5 years of being with the people. So you have more authenticity, more credibility. If when you're saying you care about justice and police reform, you put some skin in the game. The rest of them were just talking heads, talking a good talk, but they never put in any of the work to get those seats. So that's why I think 2021 can be different, but it starts right now. Make a decision to run. And if you are a white person, you might decide to run. If you see a qualified person of color who's been putting in work, get the fuck out the way. You don't have to take up every seat. Put your money, your time, your resources, and your power behind a BIPOC candidate who's going to stand for our people and speak for our people and advocate